Hello, viewers. I'm Vibhuti Jha. This is Jaipur Dialogue USA. Thank you for joining us. Just as always, please like, subscribe, share, and support our channel any which way you can. Your feedback is important. We listen to you. Today, I'm going to talk about an ongoing situation that is happening in Bangladesh. It's not a new story anymore. What is important here is the speed at which things are happening. Every day you are looking at a very belligerent attitude of Bangladesh interim government led by that Nobel laureate. I think Nobel Committee should pull his award back. So the question here is, are Hindus going to survive this litmus test? Do we have that resolve? Do we have that commitment that we will not let anybody roughshod over us? To talk about this serious matter and the speed at which it is moving, I have great pleasure in welcoming my dear friend, Mr. Rahul Sur, a former police officer and the United Nations executive. Rahulji, welcome to the show.
Namaste, Vibhuti ji. Namaste.
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you for joining us today. And, I wanted to, we have had many serious conversations on varieties of issues, and this is something truly remarkable because we Hindus are under attack everywhere on the planet Earth, as it seems. We are seeing in the US, the caste, the Hindutva, as if the most peaceful community in the world is branded as the most evil. So much so that in Bangladesh, they are trying to declare ISKCON as a terrorist organization. Can you think about that? But if you talk about Bangladesh doing a terrorist act, then we are branded as phobic and bigoted. So the rate at which things are moving in Bangladesh, knowing what we know now, what's going on? What's your take as a police guy, as well as a United Nations, employee involved in peacekeeping and dealing with terrorism as an issue? Tell us something more about it, your perspective on that.
First of all, Vibhuti ji, thank you very much for inviting me on this very important and rapidly developing subject. So just to have a very quick glance back at where we are right now, today is the 3rd, and it was on the 5th of August that the Sheikh Hasina government was overthrown. And since then, so many things have happened. So we should try to break down the situation into two parts. One is what Bangladesh has done to itself, and the second is what Bangladesh has done to Hindus. So let's look at what Bangladesh has done to itself, which in my view, amounts to a wholesale repudiation of the foundations on which that country was based. And essentially, if I were to put it in a succinct manner, it is the growth of the poisonous plant of Islamic fundamentalism has dug its roots deeper, and its branches are longer and stronger than ever before. Let me give you some examples. Now, how did we see the so-called student movement behaving? The first thing which they did was they attacked the symbols of secularism in the country, and which led to vandalism, desecration, uprooting, and setting on fire of more than 1,500 statues and sculptures, in which Bangabandhu Mujibur Sheikh Rahman was also targeted. Now, in terms of a mental exercise, just imagine if people in India did that to our national monuments of independence. It's unthinkable. But what these young misguided boys were doing, which were presented as brave change makers in the West, was turning their face back on the country's, the secular past. In addition to that, we have many other markers of the growing Islamic fundamentalism out there. You have got the growth of Islamic fundamentalism, which is there in Bangladesh's universities. You have got the release of terrorists. You have got the issue of growing conservative influence in the educational system. There have also been demands to change the country's national anthem, which was written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1905. Good luck changing that, because once they decide to change that, they'll be caught between competing poles of Islamic fundamentalism. They want to change their constitution, and there have been demands to make it a caliphate. So if you have a look at all this, Vibhutiji, you can say that the country has well and truly shot itself in the foot, because now it has opened up a chapter of completely uncertain direction on where it is going to progress. And let us bear in mind that the origins of this government, it is not a legitimate government in terms of it had come to power by illegal means, and therefore has simply been accepted by the international community, but that does not override the fact and the circumstances in which it came to power. That's one. So country has done itself a very bad turn. In addition to that, we as Hindus, Bangladeshi Hindus, and it is time that we Hindus understand that Hindus are seen as one community worldwide by non-Hindus, have been under severe attack out there. The temples have been destroyed, the property has been destroyed, senior academics were forced to resign, and consequently, you had the attack on ISKCON, and there should be no doubt in the mind of any objective observer that they are discriminated on only on the basis of their religion. It is a part of the international jihad in which these people are at the forefront and we are at the back. So that is where we are in terms of what the country has set itself out to do. It faces a very uncertain future, and it has grave risks for the country's Hindus and also for our country and for the entire South Asia region, and in fact, I would say for international security.
That's a very, very precise and definition of the situation as it exists.
Right.
You refer to the Islamic, they are heading towards establishing a caliphate. They are driven for hate towards Hindus. And a country that was seemingly moving pretty satisfactorily on economic front and was becoming an example of liberal Islam or secular growth that was happening in Bangladesh.
Right.
How did it all change suddenly? I mean, what triggered that change? And to that, I will also ask you for another element of that Hindu persecution, we know it was happening in Pakistan all the time.
Right.
This was also East Pakistan once upon a time. It looks like it is becoming East Pakistan. So tell us about the stories of Hindu persecution in this part of the region and the western part, pre and post 1971, when this country was established. Thanks to India, this country got self-respect established, and I call Bangladeshis today unabashedly the ungrateful people, the ungrateful government. Correct.
Right.
Yeah, your take.
So I think that it is really worth looking back in terms of the one indisputable marker which we have for Hindus in Bangladesh. And that is the numbers, the percentage of Hindus in Bangladesh, which was 1/3 in 1947, and it is now down to 7. With the result that there has been a drastic fall, obviously, in the country's Hindu population. Now, what has happened to them, right? So we consider that 1971 is the defining moment in which a genocide was launched against the the Bangladeshi Hindus by the West Pakistan government, and that is true. And here, the enormity of what happened to the Bangladeshi Hindus in 1971 is well documented as a genocide. And if anybody wants to know one searing image that encapsulates the horror and the evil which was perpetrated upon the Bangladeshi Hindus, I suggest they go and look up a picture in which you have seen a Pakistani soldier. He is standing before a very thin man who has got and he is pulling out his lungi, with the obvious intention of seeing whether the man was circumcised or not. And if he was circumcised, that meant certain death. If he was not circumcised, that may or may not mean death, but certainly it was a possible lifeline to life. We have got graphic accounts of what happened in Bangladesh at that time from absolutely independent sources, from US sources. And in fact, the US consul general out there, they were in revolt at that time in describing what was happening out there, which was called the blood telegram. And there are contemporaneous accounts on the Times of London, and they were contrasting the beauty of the countryside with the death that stalked the country. So with the result that there was a genocide, but 1971 was not the only one. There were huge bouts of anti-Hindu violence even before that. And I remember reading about an incident in which on a bridge, the train was stopped, both ends of the bridge were blocked off, and the Hindus are massacred in cold blood. I think it happened in 1950. So 1971 is a defining moment in which it has been legally, labeled a genocide. But the 1971 post period has also been deadly to the Hindus, because after that, there have been numerous ways in which their population has been decimated, including by the so-called Enemy Property Act, which was there in 1965 in Pakistan, which was resurrected in Bangladesh as a Vested Property Act, which has been used as an instrument of widespread illegal grabbing of Bangladeshi Hindus' property, with the result that millions have had to come to India. So again, this is a peace-loving minority, and there is a general consensus in Bangladeshi society based upon Islamic norms that they have to be treated as second-class citizens because they are non-Muslims, they are kafirs. And in terms of the change of government, let us not fool ourselves that, 1971, we had a pro-India government that may have been true of the Awami League to a certain extent, but the persecution of Hindus has continued throughout. And we had the warnings from this written by Taslima Nasreen when she wrote the book Lajja. So the result is, Vibhuti ji, that there has been a continuous decimation and a sidelining of the Bangladeshi's Hindu population, with the result that now they are in the position where they are in, and with the result that we are faced with a situation where they might disappear in the next 10 years. And this is according to estimates not by myself, but by Bangladeshi academics themselves. So there is a grave existential problem in which no Indian and Hindu can remain indifferent.
That's very alarming. And the one thing is very important, which I picked up from your statement, the population data. Like you said, that Bangladesh had 30% or so number of Hindus in that country at that time. Now it is down to 7%. We know what has happened in Afghanistan. We know what has happened in Pakistan. But everywhere there is an established pattern of history repeating itself. Leave, convert, or die. It happened, the tragedies happened in Noah Khali. Prior to that, it happened in Mopla. It happened in Razakars. It happened in Kashmir. It's happening in Bangladesh. It's Noah Khali repeating itself. So the question is, are we learning anything from the history? Because nobody is giving a damn for Indian lives in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. But the moment something happens, the whole world is attacking India as if India is a den of thieves and murderers of minorities, whereas they have increased their population several percentages that they are becoming. They don't deserve to be called a minority anymore. What do you think about that?
So in terms of what have we learned, I think that there may be the beginning, the nascent awareness amongst Hindus that this is a serious situation. We have, of course, had, Hindus, the diaspora, raising their voice against it. Some echoes in India. The government of India has made a statement that it views with concerns. But at the same time, I think that what has happened is, because of the slow motion nature of this, and because of the fact that it has been completely neglected by the international media, neglected by the United Nations, and the Hindus themselves have been absolutely remiss in this, that they do not possess a memory for the historical wrongs which have been done to them, for which huge amounts of evidence exists, that the question is still open whether we have learned something from it. But the answer to my mind is certain, that we must learn something from it. Otherwise, as it has been said, that you ignore history at the peril of it repeating. And consequently, what has happened not only in Pakistan, but also in Bangladesh, also to other minorities in other parts of the world. If you have a look at what has happened to the Christians in the Middle East, the Baha'is, and the Christians and the animists of South Sudan, they've all been subjected to relentless cleansing. And what this is nothing less than an international jihad, which is being relentlessly waged, sometimes with a greater intensity, sometimes with a lesser, but nevertheless often incessant and continuing quality.
You know, lesson must be learned. And I have
Yes.
always said, and I share it with my audience, and I'll repeat it again today, because there are times when a particular quotation or the saying must register in your mind, that history is littered with corpses of men and women who forget the lessons of history. And that's what Rahulji was alluding to, that you have to learn, you have to know, and that's what is important. Here was something very interesting I saw in the newspaper reports, like President-elect Donald Trump issued a very strong statement during his campaign, towards the closing stages of his campaign, supporting Bangladesh and supporting Hindus, and it was very well appreciated. But, the question came to my mind as when I saw Mamta Banerjee's statement, that she was trying to appeal to United Nations to interfere or come in. That sounded very bizarre to me. That Mamta Banerjee, who is she to ask United Nations to intervene in this matter? Is it technically possible? Does United Nations have a locus standi for what they did with Kashmir solution, and wherever they have, in every political struggle they have failed? And you know United Nations inside out. Your take on that? How legitimate is that demand? How vicious is that? Is there something behind it that I'm not seeing it?
So, in terms of the request or the demand or the statement which has been made by Mamta Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, it is actually nothing more than political grandstanding, and she wants to basically show that she is taking an active interest, but at the same time, shunning off all responsibility. In terms of the technical feasibility of the suggestion, of course, it is always technically possible, because the Security Council, which under international law and under the UN Charter has, quote unquote, the sole responsibility of maintaining international peace and security, decides that a situation is a danger to international peace and security, then it can adopt a mandate setting forth a UN peacekeeping mission. But that is, of course, easier said than done. And especially in a country like Bangladesh. Bangladesh has, of course, rejected it out of hand. And in this respect, I'd also like to, inform your viewers that Bangladesh is one of the most significant contributors to UN peacekeeping. And it has more than 4,000 troops deployed at this time. And these troops constitute a very important and a continuing source of income for the Bangladeshi government. And this assignment in the United Nations is so coveted that a few years ago, there was a revolt in the Bangladeshi police, and they had literally gone and killed Bangladeshi army officers because they were vying for a deployment in UN peacekeeping. So this is a political grandstanding by Mamta Banerjee, but it does raise the deeper question that where does the responsibility for managing the situation lie? And that obviously lies only in the ruling party, the BJP, and Mr. Modi's, leadership. So that is where the ultimate responsibility must lie. And she has said, she has asked the Prime Minister to take a proactive role. And I think that's a good thing. That's a right thing. It's legally the correct thing to do. And therefore, I think the time has come for the central government to take a more active role in this, in addition to the salutary steps in the statement which has been made by our foreign minister.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the key issues on which India's position historically has been that, let's say, Kashmir and Pakistan, India has always not welcomed and actually rejected any mediation in the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and India insofar as Kashmir is concerned, right? And it was also part of the agreement now that is acknowledged. Mr. Trump has offered to mediate between India and Pakistan, and Modi said no. And, so the question is, if India intervenes and says this is happening, it is an internal matter in Bangladesh. Indira Gandhi acted because the refugees were spilling over. Hindus in Bangladesh have said, we will not go to India, this is our country, but they are facing cleansing. At what point in time will India have to intervene, given the scenario as it exists? Something needs to be done about that. There's a growing cry is happening, and that's why I'm talking about Hindu resolve and our survival.
Yeah.
Because if Bangladesh spills over to Mamata Banerjee, or in the northeast, you are looking at a serious situation going on in India.
So in terms of this internal affairs, first let's keep that aside for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The Pakistan situation, the Kashmir situation is fundamentally different out here. Here we are talking about the human rights of Bangladeshi Hindus. And it is international has now advanced to a point that the violation of a minority's human rights is no longer a concern only of that country. That is well recognized in international law and well recognized in international practice, as a result of which you have the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, you have the United States, which has arrogated to itself the right to issue reports on the human rights in various countries. So therefore, India expressing its concern for the human rights of Bangladeshi Hindus is not at all an interference in the internal affairs, because it is a question of human rights. So let's put that question aside for a moment. The question of Hindu resolve as to what can be done, and I would emphasize what can be done within peaceful, legal, diplomatic means within the UN Charter, at the same time being effective, is a different one. And I can, of course, not being privy to all of the information which the government of India has, certainly see, a series of measures which can be, taken by the government of India. And, I would be happy to, discuss them if you're so interested.
Sure, would be. Please do.
So you see, Vibhutiji, the thing is that, first of all, we in India need to define our national interest. What is our national interest in this? And, for instance, Trump says that I, work for America, and we should be very clear about what is in our national interest out here, which is one, we want to have a peaceful and effective resolution of this, which upholds the rights of Bangladeshi Hindus without a, deterioration of the relations between the two countries. If we define that national interest as such, there are many things we can do. Internally, the first thing, if I was, in a position to possibly advise the MEA and the Prime Minister through various channels, is to convene an all-party parliamentary group in which developments in Bangladesh are continuously monitored and reported to everybody. What is that going to do? The first thing it is going to do, which is essential for us as a country, is it is going to maintain internal political unity. Because we know that this question can be used in terms of internal politics and Muslim votes, etc., etc. So this is the first thing which the government should do, that it convene an all-party parliamentary group to make sure that the nation speaks in one voice. We already have Mamata Banerjee, who is the chief minister, who has acquiesced to the leadership rightly of Prime Minister Modi in this regard, number one. Number two is that this government in Bangladesh is not fully a legitimate one. So again, what can we do? Well, it's very simple. We call for free, fair, and immediate elections in that country. That is going to put us on the right side of international law. It is going to burnish our credentials as the world's largest democracy, and nobody can find fault with us for asking for an election out there. For instance, the so-called, the contractors of the guardians of democracy in the European Union and United States, well, we are the world's largest democracy. So calling for it is going to serve the purpose of keeping the regime on the defensive, because it is now making increasingly aggressive demands for the extradition of Sheikh Hasina.
Right.
And they do not want to, the last thing which they want to do is to have a free and fair election, because now, given the level of endemic corruption that exists in the country, certainly they see it as an opportunity for, taking themselves forward. And therefore, in that sense, any demand for an election is going to be unwelcome, but a good positive step from our side. That's number two. Number three is that we in India have a considerable amount of peaceful leverage over Bangladesh. In terms of a geographical situation, we almost surround them. Was that in terms of the leverage which we have over Bangladesh, we have considerable leverage, because we almost surround them geographically. We have a positive, balance of trade, and they owe us a lot of money in terms of electricity. $800 million is owed to Adani alone. And consequently, a quiet telling of these factors to the Bangladeshi government will have a salutary effect. So essentially, we have to work from a position of strength, that is peace through strength.
Right.
And in terms of other things, we have, I would also recommend regular reports by our intelligence agencies and Ministry of Home Affairs in terms of what is the situation of Hindus in Bangladesh. What will be the result of this? And that is, it is going to be open to scrutiny. Just like the United States State Department has reports on the human rights condition of various countries, we should have a same kind of reports based upon open source intelligence, which the people can read. And consequently, the Bangladeshi government will feel under scrutiny. It is critical that they feel under scrutiny. And all which I'm proposing right now is entirely peaceful. And obviously, the last part of it can be the economic sanctions in the hands of Indians, their buying power, the boycott of Bangladeshi goods, because they are highly dependent upon, governments' exports, especially to Western countries. So with all these things, we can give a very clear message to Bangladesh that we will not tolerate the violation of the human rights of Bangladeshi Hindus. And all what I'm suggesting, Vibhuti, I'm not suggesting a use of any violence, but simply a firm resolve based upon peace through strength.
Peace through strength. That's a very powerful statement, and we have to kind of make sure of that. But a lot is happening, a lot of consternation. I'm seeing this, and I'm happy about that in a way. I'm happy about the fact that the Indian diaspora is awakening a lot more about this matter. What is the role of the Indian diaspora here? Because what I do know for a fact, that a whole lot of Bangladeshi and Pakistani insurance agents and brokerage and other people, real estate salesmen, they rely upon us a lot. They call their restaurants at Indian, Pakistan, Bangladesh restaurants. All those things are happening. What is our role? What must be our role in the whole process? The diaspora role. What must the diaspora do in real terms?
Well, the diaspora in the United States and elsewhere, is a vocal and prosperous lot. And I think that they should keep on, lobbying for this. And
Yeah.
there are several things which can be done. One is that, the transition team of Mr. Trump needs to be sent the tweet which Mr. Mohammad Yunus gave when Trump was elected in 2016, which he called it a solar eclipse, in which he called it, he's essentially a Trump hater. So that jogging of Mr. Trump's memory in terms of he was not at the top of Mr. Mohammad Yunus's popularity charts will be a good thing to remind, Mr. Trump. In terms of our diaspora, several of them have already spoken out, and that is all to the good. They should keep on lobbying at various levels. And I think that pressure on the United Nations also will help, which has been, missing in action in this, especially when it comes to the horrific violence which has been perpetrated upon Hindus, in Pakistan and in Bangladesh. And of course, there is the power of the purse. We can always refuse to buy, refuse to deal with them, and make sure that the pain is felt. Because remember, we have not started this. We have not started this. We are responding. We are the ones who are discriminated against. And consequently, the only language they will understand is a combination of all these factors: peace through strength, economic, diplomatic, and financial.
Let's face an inconvenient truth, to quote Al Gore's phrase of inconvenient truth. The stories went around that Sheikh Hasina's refusal to give America the piece of land for their base, an island for their base, triggered the whole thing. How true is that? And was United States deep state keen to destabilize Sheikh Hasina to target India? Is that a possibility? And that's where the role of Indian diaspora in America becomes very critical in terms of interaction with the political heavyweights, Trump or Biden, whoever it is.
So, in terms of the American deep state, sometimes, I doubt if these people have any, wisdom or foresight in terms of what they plan to do. Because sometimes, if all what is alleged against them is correct, then they have, really, succeeded in shooting themselves in the foot. Because they should realize that Bangladesh can be a source of Islamic fundamentalism and terrorists. Now, in this case, the Bangladesh internal situation was not without, fault, in the sense that they have had a government which has not been very democratic. And this is one of the things, is another example of a failure of, democracy in Muslim countries. They mismanaged their democracy and then they blamed India for that. Pakistan mismanaged their democracy and they couldn't blame India for that, for the simple reason that, we are not involved in the internal affairs. But Bangladeshis felt that India was the big brother, that it was managing the internal affairs, but the fact was that they mismanaged their democracy. Now, if America has gone in and done this, then it is certainly something which they are going to be concerned about. Because if they have unleashed a process in which the fruit is radical Islamic elements, then they should be well aware that we are living in a world in which there are no borders, in which terrorism cannot cross. So, what is the calculation of these people? Have they done it or not? That, frankly, to my mind, lies in the realm of speculation. But what we do know is that Mohammad Yunus has been very close to the Clintons and has been very close to the American left. And consequently, there was a lot of bonhomie and, good feeling amongst themselves when he came out here and, met Biden. So therefore, now the situation has changed because of the election of Donald Trump, and consequently, he is a person who is uniquely endowed with common sense. Although common sense should be far more common, but it seems to be he seems to be possessed of it in abundant terms, and consequently, he had called it out in terms of what was happening on November 1st before the election. So now we have a geopolitical situation which is developing out there in terms of increasing Islamic fundamentalism out there, in for which the whole region should be concerned, including America.
And you are absolutely right, and I agree with you that the Islamic terrorism, the way it is going on, it is a phenomenon of the 21st century. And Mr. Trump is very determined.
Right.
He's called it out as it is. And India and the United States have that one convergence point, strategic partners and natural allies aside, economic opportunities aside, but there is one convergence point is the battle against Islamic terrorism. And they are both Trump, particularly. I won't say of the US government of Democratic Party, but I would definitely say about the Trump's leadership. He is determined to crush that. Point of the matter is that Trump is not a classic politician who makes election speeches for the heck of doing it. He means business, like he did when he issued a severe warning to Hamas: release hostages before I take over, otherwise, hell will go berserk on you, right? He gave that warning.
Yeah.
Likewise, he has also given, United States is embroiled in a major geopolitical factor in Ukraine, which is also spilling over. Europe is trying to spill it over all over the world as if the Europe problem is global problem. Now you have Bangladesh. Open killings of Hindus, desecration of temples, rape of women. Same old story repeats itself, including leave, convert, or die. That's the thing going on. How does this frame up in the entire geopolitical reference where Bangladesh is not even a subject matter of conversation in American media?
So they unfortunately, or fortunately, unfortunately, or perhaps naturally, tend to be involved in what's happening out here, what's happening in Europe. But there have been, terrorist attacks in Bangladesh in which, Americans have been killed in 2016, for example. And experts are well aware of the potential of exporting, terrorism from there. Now, in terms of geopolitical, how it's likely to, to play out, is that China, of course, is a major player, America is a player, and India is obviously a player. So, this is an opportunity for us to understand that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam does not mean that we are an absolutely naive country in which we do not flex our muscles when it is necessary. And this is a time when we absolutely need to make clear to the international community that this is something which is in India's vital interest, and that we will take all necessary diplomatic, peaceful measures to make sure that this is stopped. And unless the Prime Minister does so, and I would certainly hope that he will exercise more visible leadership in this question, then we simply cannot muddle on, because if we leave the field, for other people, that place will be taken. And we have a direct civilizational interest in this, in protecting Hindus in Bangladesh, because we know what happened in Pakistan, we know what happened in Kashmir, and Europe is facing a similar problem. And consequently, there might be a confluence of factors which are favorable to our worldview, in which the Indian diaspora must flex its muscles, but at the same time, the leadership should remain firmly with the government of India. And I had suggested some steps which they may wish to consider.
No, this is critical. I think it is more of a geopolitical matter in a great sense with reference to the Hindu diaspora globally, because we become the target. I have not heard, I mean, correct me and please add there. We got chased out of, Indians and Hindus got chased out of Uganda. Many countries, Fiji, there was a turmoil, which the Fiji Indians over there, they handled it very well. They asserted themselves, they stayed. But we somewhere along the line, the most peaceful community in the world is a target of attack everywhere, dismantling Hindutva. But if you and I were to question Islamic terrorism, we are branded as phobic and bigots. How does the Indian diaspora fix that problem? Because we have no united voice in this matter. We have no one common platform to do that.
So I think that it's going to, come gradually. There cannot be a magic wand. And what, Jaipur Dialogues is doing, what so many other channels are doing, what brave historians are doing, that is all goes to that end, that is gradually raising awareness. Because unfortunately, to what I see is that the Hindu pride is in his ancient culture is inversely proportional to his ability to look forward into the future and see what is going to happen to him.
Right.
Because the warning signs are clear. The warning signs are clear. And this is a fight which we can only postpone, but we cannot avoid. So this fight can only be postponed to the next generation. But if we run away, then therefore that means we have done a preemptive surrender. So bit by bit, step by step, the diaspora will have to step up. Now, in terms of, I was listening to a show the other day, in fact, Jaipur Dialogues, and a gentleman from Bengal, he was saying that the unity which has been shown by Bangladeshi Hindus is remarkable. And this has not happened. And he said there are more, this kind of demonstration has not happened earlier. So, when there is a small group, there is likely to be a more heightened sense of self-awareness and possibly threat, and therefore a drawing closer together, and which is seen in the case of Bangladeshi Hindus. But in the case of India, because there are millions upon millions of Hindus, they do not see the threat which is emerging until it's going to be too late. So better now than never, Vibhuti. Step by step, we will have to wake up Hindus. Otherwise, disaster lies ahead.
Disaster is a very grim warning, and sometimes I'm an incorrigible optimist, and I believe that in the battle of dharma, dharma always wins, truth always triumphs, but we have to fight for it. One of the things that happens to is the lackadaisical or the complacency that sets in us Hindus, particularly of the Indian variety. सब ठीक हो जाएगा, we'll take care of it. Somebody will emerge, something will happen. That kind of an attitude, you could be dead before you do something. And that's what is important for us to recognize this reality that if you are not rising about it today, you're not making an issue out of it today, tomorrow you may not be there to talk about it.
Yeah.
This is very worrisome because we always forfeit our ground because we don't like to define ourselves. We let others define. And we seek some kind of a Western validation for even our theories. Like I was seeing a tweet the other day, and I must say this to you. And one IIT engineer friend of mine shared that with me about a tweet by Sebastian Nerdick, who says that mind blowing. His tweet is mind blowing. While modern day AI researchers are surprised how LLMs show emergent capabilities from text alone, the Manduka Upanishad already proposed that all of reality could be understood through language. Now I said, Manduka ne kaha hua hai, how come we are more satisfied and thrilled about Sebastian of Berkeley or UCLA, wherever he is talking from, and we are very happy about it? And that's the thing comes up. We always seek a Western validation. Why do we want others to tell us what we must do? Transcendental meditation, of which I'm a practitioner. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi brought it to United States globally. Now then people are beginning to follow in India. Why? Why are we perpetually not able to get out of this colonial mindset? And the other thing was very important conversation relevant for this from the diaspora perspective. Somebody said, hey, stop saying happy birthday songs and burning candles over a cake. That's the British put it on us. If you want to get rid of colonized mind, stop doing that birthday practice. Do something your own. Tell us something about that. Your thought. You have been international. You are United Nations. You are seeing the world. You have seen a lot of work. You have done yeoman work with reference to Islamic terrorism, of which we are all part of in terms of disseminating the information. Diaspora. We have the unique situation. 5 Hindu Americans are there in Trump administration. Hopefully they are all confirmed, except Jay Bhattacharya, who has embraced Christianity. And he said very nicely, it's not my cousins are more welcoming of me than people in India are welcoming of me for becoming a Christian. We have no problem with that. This is where the diaspora has to rise. what must happen?
So, in terms of the diaspora, again, let's look at the positives and the negatives. One of the things which we see is that the Indian diaspora, which is largely a Hindu diaspora, is quite successful around the world.
Right.
It is successful here, the UK, in Africa, and the question is, why is it successful? And one of the reasons why it is successful is they keep their head down. They don't get involved in pushing their ideas on others. They are adjusting, and they are, by and large, law abiding. And with the result that with their emphasis in education, they also tend to have communities. So with the result that they tend to, rise and with the habit of saving and consequently become successful. Now, these very same qualities of not being aggressive, of minding your own business, of giving a priority to education, of believing in nonviolence, can become a very great disadvantage when you are faced with a fundamentally hostile situation. And so, therefore, we have to adjust and say, well, our peaceful adjusting mindset is not appropriate for the changed circumstances. And we will have to make sure that we go into a more aggressive defensive mode, because self defense is the first law of humanity. Self defense is the law of nature, which cannot be overridden by anybody. So therefore, we don't even have to look at our shastras, etc., for validation, why we have to be aggressive. It is the law of nature. A tree tries to protect itself, a dog tries to protect itself. And so therefore, the first thing which we have to do is we have to make sure that we don't disappear. Now, in terms of the analysis of what are the characteristics which I see in the Hindu, mindset, I call them, they all start with the letter I, right? The first is ignorant, uh, indecisive, introverted, and therefore ineffective. And with the result that we fail to coalesce into a common mass. Now, here there may be a sense of more of unity amongst the diaspora in the United States because we are smaller and because we have cultural affinity. But at the same time, perhaps it is this small group of us outside which are going to show the way for people in India. And there are obviously, groups in India who are also conscious of this. But there is no short-term solution for this. It is a hard slog in raising Hindu consciousness, one person by another, one difficult conversation by another.
Thank you very much. As always, our conversations, I enjoy conversations with you because we talk about issue and potential solutions to that. And one of the things that comes to my mind is stop offering apologies for who and what we are. This is, in my opinion, a very important thing. Do not have to apologize for who we are. We are naturally tanned. We don't need to go to the beach to burn our skin, nor do we have to go into a tanning machine. Let's be proud of our under our skin and with our skin. Let's begin from there. Number two is the fact that we have to begin demanding reciprocity. We need to demand reciprocity. I always say you have full freedom of religion, freedom of speech to ask or condemn my faith. I need the same right without the fear of death to ask questions about your faith and your practices. This is very important to establish equivalence and equality. Then only there can be a conversation. Then only there can be a dialogue. This is very important for the entire diaspora. And because we are 3 or 4 million in this country, it exposes us to all kinds of machinations like caste that happens in America. That the way we were hounded about caste, we were not aware of that, but we were branded by people who did not know anything about it based on a false bogus report. So, as Rahulji said, get up and get going. Because unless and until you get engaged with your local communities and the communities around you, people will not know you. And let me give you an example. This happened in my home district of Port Washington. There was a victory celebration for Trump hosted by Republican Party. More than 350 people came for that. I was the only Indian there. Only. There was one more who was not quite visible. I was the only one. The Chinese, the others were there in numbers. Community participation, although Manhasset, Port Washington has significant number of Indians out there, very few. I was the only one. Think about it from that perspective, that if you are not engaged in a victory celebration of a man whom you voted very well for, you broke the ranks this time to vote for Mr. Trump, but you don't go for victory celebration, you lose a moment. You have to seize the moment. We Indians have to seize the moment. The moment is ours. If you are not seen, felt, or visible, then you are out of sight, out of mind. So with these words, Rahulji, thank you very much for joining today. And I always say, Satyame Vijayate, Satya ko jeetne ke liye, you and I have to rise up and fight for it. Truth
Yes.
doesn't triumph on its own. So let's get going. And
Thank you.
survival matter is very important for me, because this was a question I had asked. We did 4 years ago, we did a show. Are Hindus facing an existential threat? People said, oh, Sanatan has survived. Sanatan will survive all of it. And I said only one thing. It doesn't survive in Afghanistan. Sanatan doesn't live in Pakistan. It doesn't live in Kashmir. It doesn't live in Oasis, Hyderabad. It doesn't live in Rahul's Wayanad. It doesn't live in Bhagalpur. Think about it from that point of view. Where will Sanatan go if we become homeless in our own home?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. Vibhuti, that's what it is. We have to understand the preciousness of, Sanatan and the uniqueness of the fact that we are in India. And the fact that, our numbers have disappeared, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kashmir, Bangladesh. And this is living in a fool's paradise to believe that we will never disappear when we have already been driven out. So an unsentimental acceptance of the reality we must embrace peace through strength. And we should not mistake being, Vasudeva Kudumbakam with the thing that we owe a duty also to ourselves. That's what I'd like to tell you.
Thank you. And I also wanted to add, I have lots of Sindhi friends. Sindh, Jhulelal doesn't live in Sindh anymore. Sanatan doesn't live in Sindh anymore. Think about it from that point of view. Because if we do not arise, awake, assert, and act, which is fourth A is mind, then the 4 I's which Rahulji said, they become relevant. So with these words, let's go fight. Thank you very much.
Namaste, Vibhuti. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad.